They're willing to do that. And I've already seen some new faces coming in for the banquet tonight. Make sure you get an opportunity to talk to these people. These young people. They're amazing. I am always blessed every time they come and they give back and to hear what they're doing. So I'm going to introduce them. Marissa Fisher, Josh Craddock, Hannah Kelly, and Levi Snyder are all going to be here to answer some of your questions. I'm going to let each one of them talk to you a little bit about where they're at and what they're doing, and then we'll open it up for questions. Is that okay with y'all?
Sounds great.
Great. All right, go ahead.
All right, well, I'm Josh. I'm 20 years old, and I've talked to most of you, but I'm attending King's College in New York City right now. I'm a rising junior, studying politics, philosophy, and economics.
I'm Hannah, and I just finished up interning this past year. I'll be going to the King's College in the fall, and so this summer I'm actually working with special needs kids at the YMCA and in an ice cream and cupcake shop.
I'm Levi Snyder. I am 20 years old. I am a rising junior as well, actually with Regent University. I'm currently an online student, but I'll be attending on campus on the fall. Yeah. Me and Mrs. Moon, co-students. Anyways. No challenge there. Are we? I feel accomplished. I'm a rising junior, like I said, and I'm majoring in business administration currently.
And I'm Marissa Fisher, and over the past year I've been working as a shift manager at Starbucks and then a flow manager at a restaurant. And now I'm coming back to join the Institute and work with them through the summer and the fall.
So we'd be happy to answer any of your questions about how we're applying communication skills, leadership in the real world, and any questions that you have about what it's like to intern, if you have kids who are thinking about interning, or what happens behind the scenes. We'd love to tell you fun stories and embarrassing things about Mrs. Moon. So feel free to, oh, sorry. But no, whatever questions you have, we're happy to answer.
Can I jump in and start? And then make sure you take Mr. Schlichting's question. But I would like to know, I know we'll have questions about the internship, and I hope you address that at some point, but I would like to know what you have learned coming back since your internship. I think a lot of you did Upload 5, you did something else, and I think for a long time in the culture, people thought that at the internship you would have sort of finished that learning cycle. And so how did you use that and continue the learning when you came back to the Institute and obviously beyond?
Okay. Something that I thought was really interesting, I actually had some conversations with Mrs. Moon. I did several Flood to Fives this year, and our Flood to Five in Maryland, we had a huge conference. We had about 300 participants. We had 80 BPSers, and I was helping out with BPS. And what I thought was one of the most interesting things was that a lot of times you finish the internship, and I think that I thought that I knew a lot. But when I came back, it wasn't until I came back that's when I actually realized how much I knew. When I was starting to help run this event with all these students, that I realized how much I'd actually learned, and that I could actually manage 80 kids and have them do a presentation on the stage, and that I could actually work with a team of people, and we could manage 300 participants. And I did it like that because I'd been trained to do that. So that was something that was really neat for me to find out coming back after the internship.
Yeah.
Verify that she did.
Yeah, kind of the same thing. I actually stepped out of the organization for about a year, but last year I went ahead and led a bunch of Flood to Fives, and that little bit of a gap time gives you a break long enough to realize that you've learned a lot of things in the process. I would say I have a completely different perspective now that I've taken that year and then come back to the Institute. Just the experience you gain through leading. As an intern, you're working with the team, but when you come back as like a team leader, for example, you're teaching students how to run a conference, and you get a completely different perspective in leadership and being a leader of leaders.
I guess being on different teams in college and in the workplace and that sort of thing, it's refreshing to come back to a team like this at this convention or a Flood the Five event and be able to work with other student leaders who are rising through the leadership program and are already so confident, and you know that if you entrust a task to them, they're ready to get it done. And that's just so different than a lot of other environments that you're in. And also the care of the other teammates and the relationships that are built is just wonderful, and it's kind of one of a kind here. I've had the pleasure of leading a few Flood the Five events, not this year, but in the previous year before that, in 2010, and led one in Colorado. I've also come back and done led a few events for student leaders in Colorado, and as well as debaters. And so we've had a lot of fun working with some of the rising student leaders and developing programs and being able to work with them. And so that's an opportunity that I've had since completing my internship in 2009 and being able to come back and be still a part and involved with the organization and the student leaders.
We hear a lot of, about being an intern and, what you learned and when you interned. And I had Hannah and a couple of the ladies stay at my house last year as interns, and I loved having them. So I'm not quite sure how to ask this, but I want to say as a parent, a lot of y'all, and I know my daughter will be going on missions trips. We send our kids away for a week, 2 weeks at the most. You're 17, 18 years old, and we're sending you in someone's RV for 6 months. And you're going to be with 12 other or 10 other young people, male and female, for 6 months. I mean, really, what can you kind of address what that 6 months was like, or, did your parents really, how did everybody feel about that? Your parents, you, I mean, I don't even know exactly.
And I was just telling these ladies, in 2006 when we went to or 2007 when we went to our first conference, I told Hannah, I said, that was so wonderful, and I felt like it gave us a new vision for what we were going to be doing for the high school years. But I said, I would not feel comfortable with you traveling around with a bunch of kids for 6 months.
I mean, when they were over at my house, I was like, and she was sick at my house, I'm like, mothering her to death, but that's, you are someone's child, even though you're older, you're still someone's child, and, I had that mothering thing just kicked in when she was there at house, so.
Yeah, but I think over the years and getting to know the organization better and their philosophies and values and perspectives, God just gave me such peace. And then watching the process, it was beautiful. I mean, it was, I know there was conflict, I know there were things going on. I mean, they're teenagers, so there are things going on. But I think it was really healthy the way all of that was worked through. And I think that's a lot due to the leadership and how the relationships were handled when there was some of that.
All the intern parents are dying.
Before we do that, how many intern moms are here in this audience? Would you do it again? I would. I would do it in a minute. Anybody? Okay, how many have more than one that's traveling or going to be traveling with the organization? Okay.
Can I follow up on that question?
I do want to get to Mr. Schlichten. I know we.
Well, that's all right. No, finish up.
Is that
No,
all right?
I'm good.
Okay, all right.
We'll do.
Well, I'll just mention one comment. I think my dad expected it least of all, but the night I left for summer prep, I don't think he slept at all. In fact, he went out the next day and got a bunch of books about how to let go.
We should all share numbers and have a support group.
So I remember getting an email from my dad about it. He was like, I'm finally at peace with it, and it's good. And so I came back, on our tour stop, and it was really fun. But then they sent me off to college, and I didn't even get a phone call. I'm kidding.
No, we talk every week.
So my question was, could one of you give us, I know what you do is kind of repetitive, you do the same thing kind of over and over again. Could one of you give us a picture of what is a week like? This is what we do this, we do this, we do this. I mean, just general, just so that those of us, I mean, my daughter went to her first CFC tour event when she was 6. And then the evening program, she sat there, big eyes, and her mouth wide open. And afterwards she said, I want to do that. And I didn't even know what that was. But now she's 12 and she still wants to do that. And it scares me to death. It really does. So I'm just curious, what is a week like? If you can just kind of move into it.
Can I get this one? Okay. Let's start with Sunday. Sunday was always special on tour because we have what we call tour church, which is literally where we come together as a team, the Moons, and usually our host home. And we all just come together and have church as a group. Sometimes we would attend a local church with a host family. Typically we didn't. We would just have church together. We would have full worship. Usually there's team members that are more musically inclined than myself who just naturally worship God in that way. We would just start the week with church as a group. Sunday was typically a day of rest since Saturday was the last day of our conference. Monday and Tuesday were typically travel days, traveling to the next event. If that's from Minnesota to Colorado, that is a long trip on the motorhome. We would try to use this time as efficiently as possible since we just finished a conference. We would try to prepare for the next one, try to find stuff to improve.
And we had a lot of fun though.
And typically we would get to see maybe some sites along the way. Maybe we would have a tour stop day where we would say tour Chicago for a day or tour New York as a group. Typically Wednesday on my tour at least was setup day. We would be at the conference place. We'd set up the facility, do initial rehearsals, etc. Thursday morning was the same, more setup until the students arrived midday Thursday. And from Thursday to Saturday was conference. Up early every morning, late. We were devoted entirely to conference. As soon as it finished Saturday, we would have a little bit of a break, a little bit more time with hosts, and then it would start all over again the next week.
When do you do your laundry?
Whenever we can. Typically at night in host homes. If they were generous enough, say, if you can bring your laundry, here's the washing machine. And some hosts, really amazing hosts, were like, just give us a bag of laundry and we'll take care of it. And we're just like, yes. Thank you.
I just want to say something to that as well. I think that a lot of times when you think about your child being an intern, you think about the communication and the platform and maybe the traveling in the RV. But I don't think, this is not what I expected, and I don't think I really thought about this, but really tour is about the relationships that you develop with your team. And tour is so much more about living in community, learning how to love people well, learning how to fight well and still love someone, learning how to live as Jesus lived, and really just crying together, laughing together, and just living in community. And that's something that I really didn't expect from tour, because you bring together kids from every single background that's out there, and you put us together for 6 months. And I didn't know how I was going to mesh with my team. I was like, I don't know these people. Some of them are really conservative. Some of them aren't. I don't know what's going to happen. But I think that that was the most beneficial thing about tour, was the relationships that I formed with my team. And I would do anything for my teammates. And I love them so much. And that's just something that I think that we don't really think about when you think about sending your child to tour. But they come home with this support group and these relationships that are lifelong relationships. So
my team has reunions and stuff. They're fun. We have schedules at our reunions.
You practice loading up fans and
We don't do that at ours. Did we want to come back to Mr. Slippy first?
I was just going to ask,
We're dying to find out what this is.
What are all your middle names? No, that is not the question. How have your experiences impacted your vision of your own personal future? Have they changed your idea of what you want to do in your future?
Yeah, she said that was really worth the wait. That's a good question.
On the spot.
Well, I guess I could add something. I was introduced to Model UN on tour and got to be sort of interested in that and started researching it, and then going to school in New York, having the opportunity to actually work at the UN, I felt that it really prepared me for it, and I had an interest in it, and so when the opportunity arose, I think that was something I accepted that probably wouldn't have thought about otherwise.
For myself, I'd always been interested in more technological aspects of things, and on tour I was given the role of technology master, which means if anything went wrong with some piece of technology, like a projector didn't work, a screen didn't work, sound was going haywire, I had to fix it. Had to find some way, and I had to figure it out myself. Whatever resources I could pick up, anything like that. And I actually found that I enjoyed it, and I didn't expect to. Up until tour, I had been convinced that I wanted to pursue a law degree. I wanted to pursue a little bit more of a academic, I guess you could say, pursuit as far as where my life was going, pursuing law, etc. And I just decided that I was more interested in something that I enjoyed more, and in something that I could use in a more relevant and cultural way, and something that our culture is kind of moving towards. A very strong communications medium, and also a very reliant aspect of our culture.
Can I ask you a question? Not everyone's going to get to intern. Not all of your children are going to intern, right? Or your chapter members are going to intern. So, from what you've seen and what we're offering to chapter members at large, how do you see that helping them after high school when they go out to college? Yeah.
I will just jump on that question because that is the reason why I am back. I took that year break from the Institute, and I went and I worked at Starbucks as a manager, and I went and worked at a restaurant as a manager, and I got that work and life experience in two completely different settings. The restaurant is a fine dining restaurant, and Starbucks is Starbucks. It's really chill, you know? And I worked with a lot of different people in a lot of different situations, and that kind of reinforced everything that I had learned in the Institute about how important it is in your communication. And I guess the vision of the Institute and how they emphasize that through the chapter program and through the Young Speakers Guild really impacted the way that I approached how I work. And that's why I got the positions that I did. And that's why I am the youngest person at my restaurant and Starbucks, and I got promoted to those positions really fast because of the way that I had approached work ethic and because of the way that I communicated with my team members and had that leadership capability. So it's something that I'm really passionate about, and that's why I'm back. So.
I think that the Institute for Cultural Communicators their mission is not to create interns. That's not the vision. The vision is to train students to be able to speak in our communities, to be able to communicate our thoughts well. And they can accomplish that without ever being an intern. Being in the chapter programs, the leadership opportunities that they have, if your child wants it, they can have those opportunities. I know that one of my really good friends, Josh Freeman, he's probably not going to be an intern. That's not something that he definitely wants to do. But he is so prepared. You guys have probably heard him speak, and he's funny and hilarious and so talented and so great. And that he's not an intern, but he's been through the training. And so I think that the training really does equip you it shapes you as a person, it builds your character, and you don't need internship. Internship is just another leadership role that you can be a part of. So.
I would think that would be a testimony of a lot of, I mean, there's obviously a lot more students that haven't interned than have. And so even though these are the alumni who are coming back because they were interns and they're staying connected, I'm sure within our chapters, I know my 17-year-old who's our chapter mentor this year, hopefully. He doesn't know it yet. Anyway, he's been speaking on the platform here, and every time he gets up there, my jaw just goes, oh, that's my son. Oh my word. What he has learned through this, interaction, and it just rubs off, and it's really cool. So at any rate, he would say that, he's using it to prepare him for his career in law enforcement, because he knows he's going to have to interact with the community, and so I think Hannah's perfectly, that's just a really valid statement, that this training is for life, and if they choose an internship as part of that package, they'll get a little extra, I think. I mean, that's just sort of like the icing, and then there's just so much more after that. So, and there are things that they can do with the rolling out of the C4, the cultural certification, and things that they can do after still. So it doesn't, internship is not the only avenue. Although I do highly recommend it.
I was wondering if there's any regrets looking back. I know that ICC touches on all aspects of a high school student's life, for example, but there is also a sacrifice in that you can only do so much in 24 hours, and you have to give up something to really be involved with ICC. And I'm sure there's students that, I don't know if I want to sell my soul out to ICC because I'll miss out on whatever. Any thoughts on that? Anything that you look back and regret having missed out? I mean, honestly, having missed out on something, but it was worth the sacrifice, or do you miss out on anything by being involved at a high level of ICC?
I mean, I can answer that one.
We are just wowing them with these questions here.
That's a great question. That's an important question.
Can I make a request, actually? For questions, why don't we direct them at a specific alumni? Because we're trying to figure out who's best to answer this.
Yeah.
Because we could each come up with an answer to your question, to tell the truth.
I'll start with Levi.
Okay. That backfired. For myself, initially I regretted that I actually got into this rather late in life. I'm the oldest in my family, the oldest child. And I was kind of the guinea pig for it. I was the one that when I went to the first conference, I was like, ooh, I want to do that intern thing. And it looked amazing, and I wanted to be like the leaders, and I actually drugged my mom through it, and she did not appreciate this. And by now, though, I realized that it was probably better that I did not get involved earlier, because though there were things that I could have picked up, there were other activities that I was involved in, other parts of my community that I was involved in, that kind of shaped me and prepared me for what I was going to learn in ICC, such as I was involved in a drama team for 2 years that actually did a couple of international trips, and learning a lot about teamwork there before I ever came to ICC, before I ever interned and actually found out, oh wait, drama's only a portion of what I can communicate. So initially my regret was I didn't get involved in this soon enough, but by the end of it, I was wishing that I had been more prepared for what I was going to learn.
Oh, okay.
Can I say something about that?
Yeah.
Actually, this is very near and dear to my heart because I wanted to be a ballerina ever since I was 3 years old. And I danced. There was a point in my life when I was 16 years old, I was dancing 20 to 25 hours a week. Wanted to be a dancer. I was good at dancing. And I came to the ICC event in 2007, started getting involved, and there came a point when I had to make a decision if I was going to do this communications thing or if I was going to be a dancer. And the Lord kind of closed the door on dance for me. And there have been times when I have regretted that so much. Like, it makes me sad that I haven't. But at the same time, I wouldn't trade my experiences with ICC for anything, because the way it's prepared me and trained me, the relationships, the experiences, and it is a sacrifice, but God has called me to that path. And so I think if you sit down and evaluate, like, what does the Lord have for us? Because maybe the Lord does have, maybe He has your son doing baseball, and maybe that's his mission field, but maybe it's communication. So, but yeah, I did sacrifice that, and there are times that makes me sad, but at the same time, this has been incredible.
Thanks for an honest answer. I mean, not that I expected a dishonest answer. Thanks for sharing your heart. Those are good. Any others? Anyone?
This is a question for one of the young men, since I have 3 sons. I was just wondering what aspects of the chapter training helped you the most when you went to intern. Was it the leadership roles, or the speeches, and what types of speeches, if any?
First. All right, I'll go first. I think that I got into YSG and some of the chapter when I was doing ICC. We didn't have a chapter before I interned. Really, we had just started before I interned, so it was very new. YSG had just started, so I had kind of gone through the YSG 1, and I was already 17 and winning high school, speech competitions, and then I had to introduce myself in YSG 1. What is this? Come on. And but for me, it was I guess some of the humbling experiences and trying to learn how to serve as an RSA. That was one leadership position that I thought was really helpful for me. And then also going through some of the early YSG things and thinking about the purpose of why we're communicating. I think that was something that I had not really considered very much before, and that was a kind of a reality check for me that was really helpful.
I would like to just mention that the outgoing intern team, so Hannah's team, she's the only one on that's on this panel, is the first team that actually came through the chapter program, because it's that new. So Josh was at the very beginning of that.
And they all had to complete YSG before
they had to be billed inductees.
They had to be billed inductees before they applied.
Prior to that, it was not.
They got there in the process.
Yeah, you saw about RAP and recap alumni programs up there, so that was what I went through. And yeah, Levi did that as well. So, but Levi, did you have any thoughts to answer your question?
As far as chapter is concerned, that preparation, like I said, I drug my mother through this, and since my goal was to be an intern, and there was this pretty thing out in the distance, I figured out there were things I needed to do to get there. And I was told that chapter was one of those things. And we saw the whole flow of how the timeline worked. I was one of those people that jumped in the year after chapter started. It was this brand new concept. It was this whole new idea. I was like, Mom, we need to do a chapter. And she was like, that sounds like work. Let's not do that. I was like, Mom, we need to have a chapter. And she was like, if we're going to have a chapter, you need to do it. And I was like, this chapter thing ain't sounding so good no more. So for myself, it taught me to be self-motivated and flexible. That if there was a plan that wasn't changing, you weren't doing it right. Everything, as we were going along, we were learning new things. We were trying new teaching techniques. We were trying new ways of having a chapter at that very level. Student leadership, the 4 roles that we've become so familiar with. I was in one of the first panels where they actually announced those, and we're like, what do we want these kids to do in these roles? The organization is very much so shifting, and it's finding new ways. It's the same vision, like Mrs. Moon said, and to be flexible and self-motivated enough to chase that and want that and pursue that. I guess that's what my chapter experience taught me.
Mrs. Larson had something.
Part of what we're doing is community. So when you're here, what you all are doing is normal, and we're we're not surprised that you're doing that, we're not surprised other kids do that. But when you leave this community and you've gone on to work, to school, and other people aren't trained the same way, aren't expect the same thing, what kinds of challenges is that presented for you, and how do you overcome that? Or opportunities?
Can you be more specific? What do you mean by the challenges? The challenges faced by not having the community that we're used to? Or?
For being in a different community. So you have people that expect different things from you when you're not here. They don't expect you to be competent in something, they don't expect you to communicate, or maybe they can't because that's not coming from them.
That's something actually that I personally dealt with this year with working. Going into the environment straight from ICC and working so heavily with it, I encountered a particular situation where a shift manager had basically lost control of her shift, and she didn't communicate things properly, and things were breaking, and it was a big mess. And the manager came to me afterwards, and she was like, you know, I'm not sure how to articulate this situation to this particular shift manager and how she should have handled that. And she said, I'd like you there for the discussion to talk through things and share some of the leadership skills that you were trained in, because you've been with teams before and you have the articulation and the team building that I haven't experienced yet. And so I think, and what ended up happening is we sat down, had this conversation, and the shift manager actually came out with a new perspective and things. It was helpful, but at the same time, it was a very challenging experience because the communication is so different and people are not reading things from the same background. So you definitely have to learn to communicate those things in a new way.
Josh, I know you had an experience with the Socrates in the City, where you were asked to manage something or do something, and the person above you.
Oh yeah. Yeah, I had one of my early internships when I first got to school. I was doing an internship. We host speaking events in New York, and so I was the assistant to the person who runs it. So I was the gopher, and I was totally fine with that. And I was helping run around trying to set up a facility, and I was organizing volunteers. I was a volunteer coordinator. And so I'd organize the volunteers and try and give them instructions, but the person I was working with had difficulty communicating what the instructions were that I needed to give the volunteers. So it was sort of a frustrating experience not being able to have the information to direct the team and just always being improvising, because the guy managing director of the event was very much controlling of each particular. He had difficulty delegating to the volunteers, and so that was a frustrating experience. But not expecting the volunteers that we had gotten together, youth volunteers who were very capable of being able to put up chairs and stuff, that you would expect anybody could do. But yeah, it was an interesting experience, I guess.
For me, I started working in this cupcake place called JoJo's Cupcakes and Cream. It's this really cute pink little shop, and all girls work there, and you wear pastels, and it's just really, it seems like it would be really fun. But
behind the scenes,
let's just say that all girls work there. Let's start off with that. And secondly, these girls that work there come from such a different background than me. Just very, 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 very worldly girls. And I'm fine with that. That kind of stuff doesn't really shock me that much. But when I have been forced to work with these girls, it has been really hard, because everyone gossips about everyone else. Everyone talks behind their back. Everyone wants to be manager, and they're all so mean. And I just want to be like, stop. Like, can't we be a team? Like, we're a team. And you're over there complaining about how you didn't get enough tips. Well, if you keep complaining, then no one's going to get tips. Like, why don't we talk about this together instead of going to our manager? And then our manager comes in and starts talking to us about how incompetent everyone is. And just the way that she handled it was just it was just not the way that that I have seen leadership, that I've experienced leadership. I've experienced such incredible leadership. I guess I've been spoiled in a lot of ways because there have been things that have happened that are not okay, that are not good, that I have seen handled so beautifully by leadership. And in such, I mean, it's been hard, but it's in a good way. But then to contrast that with this secular environment, all this gossip and cattiness, it's just something that's been hard. But I will say that the girls at that shop, my sister and I both work there, they have asked us why, like, I think they try to shock us sometimes, and it's kind of funny. But they'll be like, you guys don't ever cuss. You guys don't ever use language. Like, is that something that you're not okay with? And like, they'll like say things like that, and they notice things that are different about us. And even after we had this big talk with my manager, I went up to her afterward and I was like, you know, I want you to know I'm really sorry if I've been incompetent or in any way. And she was like, oh no, sweetie, it wasn't you. Like, the only reason you're here is because everyone needed to be here. But it's just, that has been interesting for me to see how bad leadership just does not produce good results. And if you had a good leader, how everything could be run so much more smoothly.
Can I just ask Marissa real quick, how long were you in, going through, when did you start, how old were you?
I was actually 17 when I started at the Institute. Yep.
I wondered if any of you were assistant starting, but I think you all started older.
I started when I was 14.
Did your mom make sure?
I didn't really know what was going on. I kind of got. It was a bait and switch.
He brought home a flyer, and his coach said, you really ought to go to this. It would be really cool. And so I said, well, okay, how much, and where is it, and when is it, and what do we got to do? Well, he has to wear pants and a tie, and this is
Yeah,
where
that
he
was
goes.
not good.
And he came home after I think it was like the first day. He went to it was back when they had it separated into speech and debate. And he went to the debate because he was all about it. And he comes home and he goes, Mom, did you know debate is a sport?
I'm just calling.
It's been fun in our home ever since.
I have one thing that I'd like to ask to wrap up. How do you envision chapter members, or this organization, you in particular, how do you envision this affecting leadership, adult leadership? You being the adult leadership, how do you see that manifesting in our society? I know that's a big, do you understand what I'm asking? I didn't do it well, did I?
As we transition into leadership as adults, how do we see it impacting our lives and the lives of others?
Do you see yourself as being adult leadership? I guess that's what I'm asking. Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
How about this? Are you going to bring your children to ICC?
Are you talking about in the organization?
No, I'm not talking about it in the organization. I'm talking about in society as a whole. How do you see this helping the leadership that we have now? I think that most of us would agree that the general leadership we see in America right now, we don't like it. We don't want to continue to replicate it, right? We were doing this for a reason. How do you see that affecting that? Do you? Have your experiences in the time that you've been out?
Okay, yeah.
Is that now better?
I've seen
Good.
graduates of the communications training here go on to do some pretty amazing things. People who were interns, people who were not interns. Jonathan Wolfson is one of our alumni who's working with the Council of Economic Advisors on Capitol Hill. Lila Rose, a pro-life activist, is a graduate of communications training with CFC. And I guess in my own experience, I've been able to, the team that I've worked with in New York at the UN doing lobbying, sometimes it can get pretty depressing for our side at the UN, and lobbying for life and family issues, and so a lot of times they're like, well, we're going into this conference, we don't know what to do, and I'm like, well, let's use some visual aids, let's put together a flyer, and let's give a speech. The other side's giving speeches, so we ought to be out there on the floor of the General Assembly giving a speech. And so that's how I've seen it applied, and I think that that's kind of exciting. Everyone's in our group is like really energized now, and I'm excited about that. So that's how I've seen it.
Anybody else?
If not a question, but a comment and observation. Hannah was very gracious to come and help my chapter. It was my first year. And I was so frustrated because my teenagers were fighting me the whole way. And she came in, and they actually gave her a hard time too initially. and she had the skills, better than I did, to draw every one of them out. She went around, she asked them, what are you passionate about? It was a general nurse looking at her. And so she went around and pinned them down, every one of them. And the first one said, well, she said, what are you passionate about? And spoke them by name. And the first one said, I'm passionate about sleep. and she just amazed me. She said, do you know, research says that teenagers need extra sleep. You ought to write a persuasive speech on that. And she went around the circle with every one of my students. And, I can see, not only in their jobs, but just interpersonal. I mean, I was like amazed. Hannah, thank you. That was amazing.
Thank you all for doing this. We weren't sure who we were going to do the panel with, and they came up and volunteered to me right as we were getting ready to start. So thank you so much for that. All right.